Hello, everyone. I'm meteorologist Ted Keller, and I'm presenting you a heads-up weather for the Ozarks. This is now winter precipitation. First one I've done this winter. Really the first hint that we could be dealing with a storm. So far, the snow totals don't look completely out of control or crazy, but it is something worth watching. And so let's get right into the details of when this is expected. Well, the timing on this is roughly going to be from this coming Friday through the weekend. I want to start by giving you a setup. So this model we're looking at is the GEFS. So it's the Global Forecast System, GFS. That's the United States version of a long-range forecast model that runs 4 times a day. The E means ensemble. All it means is that they take this same conditions and then they run it a bunch of times by varying the conditions, the initial conditions, just a little bit. Then they take the average of all those runs. The reason you want to look at this long range most of the time is that it eliminates outliers that make outrageous claims about snowfall, rainfall, whatever topic you want to pick, and it kind of smooths it out a little bit, gives it a bit more of a reasonable look, I think, especially when you're 6 days or more out. So let's look at this. Thursday morning, 500 millibar flow, main jet stream core right here, a very cold pattern for the northern plains and much of the east. Roughly, if you just take the long wave, which is this dipping down like this, just kind of cut it right there, and then most of the cold air is going to be right in through here. So there is a supply of winter air for sure. Also, I want you to notice this little trough of low pressure. It looks pretty innocent there in California. Keep an eye on that. So here is Friday morning. So the main jet stream core, the colors are jet stream winds, so very powerful from the Great Lakes in through New England. So what happens a lot of times is when we have these little cutoff troughs, actually this isn't cut off, this is just a weak shortwave moving through the flow. Well, at least not yet. It may cut off. That's one of the beauties of trying to forecast these things. But at the way it's depicted now, it will not. And so what happens a lot of times in these situations is you have the main jet stream core here, then you have a secondary little core. You can see not nearly as strong, but it is there. And sometimes you can get rising motion, which can lead to clouds, precipitation at the intersection between this part of this jet streak and this part of this jet streak. And if you can overlay them on top of each other, you often get what you might need for precipitation. Again, not a full-blown storm like a massive cyclogenesis or a bomb cyclone, but enough to generate precipitation. So Saturday morning, this is still a very subtle feature, this trough here in the southwest. Here we have one jet speed maximum here, another one here, and then this zone right here is where we might watch for that lifting motion. And we apparently have Springfield in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. I forgot to delete that label. Anyway, so what about the temperature profile? I've been saying precipitation. So we use the same model philosophy. It's the same model ensemble. Now this is 850 millibar temperatures, about 5,000 feet above the atmosphere. So it makes it really easy to see the freezing line. It changes from blue to green. So you can see the freezing line runs from the Tennessee-Kentucky border through northern Arkansas into the panhandle region of Texas. Plenty of Arctic air up here. Enough cold air for this to be considered probably snow. Now getting down into here, and I'll highlight this in a second, this is where the cold air gets a lot more shallow. And usually the layering suggests we would get snow, sleet, and freezing rain overlaid somewhat like that. And that indeed may be what happens. Let's take a look at the GFS now. Now, these are not ensembles, but the advantage to looking at this chart is, first of all, it tells you onset time. So here's Friday morning at 6 a.m., here's Saturday morning at 6 a.m., here's Sunday morning at 6 a.m., just to kind of give you an idea. Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And so these different colors, they're all the GFS, but they are different model runs. So the yellow one is the oldest, and then the newest one is in blue and purple. And so what's happened to this model, and by the way, the snow totals are in the upper left-hand corner here. So we're only talking at the top of this graph, just over 2 inches. So again, is that a big deal? No, we can make it through that just fine. It's if it morphs into something else that we have to worry about. And this has been something that I've been hinting about on Weather to Watch for a couple of days now. So we'll see how this gets together. But so far, not an incredible storm in terms of overall totals. In fact, if we look at it graphically, here is the GEFS again. So, southern Missouri, northern Arkansas, 2 to 3 inches, basically in the period Friday through Sunday. I didn't put the graph label on there, but that's what we're looking at. And now we look at the European version of this, the EPS. it does show it's a little more widespread and possibly a little heavier with the snow, 3-inch totals, maybe 4-inch totals out here through Kansas. So already there's a discrepancy between where the maximum snowfall areas are. So again, that's why we look at these averaged mean model data outputs, because at this distance, that's all we can rely on. But it does look as if, if any freezing rain were to work its way into the area, it would be brief and would be probably most likely in northern Arkansas. But we can let the EPS model, the last thing I'll show you here, add up that freezing rain for you. So these amounts don't get me too worried about anything, but you start getting down into here where you start talking about a 1/4 inch, 1/3 of an inch, maybe approaching a 1/2 inch. That's ice storm category there for sure. So that's the EPS freezing rain forecast. Again, same period, Friday through Sunday. So that's all I have for you today. So what'll happen here is you'll probably get an update on this every day in one way or another, because I'll wait till Tuesday to do another one of these focused on the Ozarks. But then all the days in between, Monday, Wednesday, I'll do my larger weather to watch, which is the lower 48, and I certainly will talk about this. So you, for all practical purposes, will get an update every day. Of course, I would prefer to really zoom in on this later in the week, Tuesday, Thursday, using this video, which is Heads Up, which focuses more directly on the Ozarks. This is still a little bit of a regional view. We'll eventually zoom this into Missouri and Arkansas as we get closer to this potential storm.